You mean that you would then be able to sell products? Is that what you're
absolutely, to be able to sell enough vegetables and what they call added value products like worm castings, which is an outstanding fertilizer, and be able to produce enough of that stuff to actually make the entire project viable, and as well provide jobs for the teenagers to sell the stuff, to grow the stuff, to hopefully to drive it to market when they get their driver's licenses. I'm doing a lot of driving right now.
And you have enough land to do for this project?
I'm working on it right now. We have about a third of an acre that we're growing on.
Is that budding your building?
It is. We've put in 28 fruit-bearing trees. We're about to put 10 more in, so that we'll end up with an orchard on the side of the building. We have Creole tomatoes and mirliton and squash and strawberries.
Wow.
I think it would be great if someday we could reopen the Blair Grocery with the vegetables that we're growing. I've been working closely with the families of the students. A lot of the folks in New Orleans are, maybe one or two generations off the farm. And so their families still have land, but everybody's come to the city. Everybody's gone to Baton Rouge. Everybody's moved into New Orleans, and there's a couple people left on the land, but a lot of it's sitting idle. And their parents and grandparents, many of them were farmers, and so what we'd really love to do is see if we could work on maybe 10 or 20 acres someday, upstate. Maybe an hour outside of the city, where we could do some soil building, where we could grow, row crops. I mean, I have 20 corn stalks in the yard, but it would be nice if we could do an acre of corn, or we could do 10 acres of corn, or, I think organic or sustainably produced food is important to health. It's important for people to touch the soil, to get off the city streets, to get away from the televisions. Television, I guess, is pretty interesting, but it's more fascinating to watch, insects. It's hard to convince kids of this, but it's just watching nature in action, watching your tomatoes, a little seed that you put in the ground, and watching it turn into a little small plant, a bigger one with yellow buds on it and flowers, and then big, huge, beautiful tomatoes that come out of it,
yes.
And then you get to eat them.
But in response to what you just said, I have to remind you, we are on television. But I understand what you're saying, and young people today either spend their time with their laptops or television
or texting, a lot of texting,
and so they're really they're not socializing with other kids their age. Even they're really living isolated lives.
It's pretty amazing when I watch teenagers. Sometimes they'll be together in a group and they're all on their cell phones texting other people who aren't there, and they're not even talking to each other. I mean, I think the amount of disconnectedness and fragmentation in our society is it's beyond alarming. But the question is, what do we do about it?
And because it is not only bad, it is accelerating, as far as I can tell. That this is an electronic age, which I'm far too old for, but it has eliminated a lot of person-to-person contact.
That's why I think working in the soil is so important. Getting in and, I don't know. I mean, you don't have to necessarily talk to your tomatoes. You could rap at them or you could sing at them. That would be fine, too. But looking at this growth, watching how things change over time, I remember when we put tomatoes in the ground, the kids were like, what are we doing this for? And they said, what is this going to be? And then when the little plant came up, they said, what that is? I said, it's a tomato plant. And then with the green tomatoes on the plant, they said, what are those? I said, they're tomatoes. Nuh-uh.
Tomatoes are red.
Well, no, tomatoes come on a piece of styrofoam with plastic wrapped over it from the store.
All right.
From the bodega, I lived in New York, from the little corner store that they shop at that have overpriced half green and red tomatoes. I mean, in our neighborhood, one of the issues is that we don't have a grocery store within about 3 or 4 miles of our building.
And how do you feel that this direct contact with nature, how do you see that affects the lives and the outlook of your students?
Well, I would like to say that it's a miracle. It happens immediately. The kids touch the soil. Their life has changed forever. That's not the case. I think that in reality, you can think about it as a therapeutic experience. I know people talk about art therapy, but you could also talk about farming or garden therapy. People talk about spending time with animals is very therapeutic. And I think being in the soil, being gentle with plants, watching them grow, watching them change. I think, teenagers in particular, their bodies really physically changing on them every day. So from
they're
day to day,
growing just like the tomato vine.
Exactly, and that we can surround ourselves with marigolds or basil that'll make that'll keep the bugs away from the tomatoes, or we could let weeds grow around our tomatoes that'll prevent our tomatoes from growing. And that we got to make decisions ourselves in our lives. Or are we going to put ourselves among the weeds, or do we want to surround ourselves with companion plants, companions, friends who are bringing out the best of us and the best in us? You can have some of these conversations and they make sense. I think you can talk about you can say, just say no to drugs. I guess kids go, oh, okay. Or you can, over the long term, watch. We do an experiment with our bell peppers, where some of them we didn't put any fertilizer on at all. They're just in the soil. Some of them got some kind of fertilizer. Other ones got the best fertilizer we could come up with. And then we watched the long-term development of the plants. And just saying, so what do you have to do and how do you have to maintain something to make it strong and healthy and flourishing? And I think, I think it clicks in their head. I was a teacher in New York City for 7 years, and it always amazed me to have some kid who I worked with 3 or 4 years ago, who's now graduated from college, and will come back and say, Turner, when you said such and such a thing, and I go, gosh, did I say that? Yeah. And they remembered it. And the kid said, that changed my life. That paper, that assignment that you gave us, or that field trip that we went on, or the debate that we did in class, now I'm a major in blah, blah, blah. And I said, really? You're a sociology major now, an anthropology major, a history major. I said, I had no idea,
Yes.
These things take time.
Well, I understand the gratification for when someone says, you've changed my life, because I had a college student who was in a class to which I made a presentation on atheism, and he wrote a letter saying, you have changed my life.
Right.
And that's quite a strong feeling.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, when you have these students who are involved with nature and with art, and I don't know whether you're involved with music at this time, but now they are still going to have to be prepared to go to college. And those, what we just discussed, are not part of the college entrance exam.
Right.
So, but you are at the same time providing an education that will be required of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Remedial math, remedial reading. The reality of it is, a couple of young people who I work with who've gone to local high schools. One of them was in 10th grade, and I actually don't think he can read.
That's really sad.
We went through the alphabet, and he couldn't get through the alphabet.
And he was in the 10th grade.
Yeah,
they just kept pushing him.
Yeah, they kept pushing him along. But I think that that some of the young folks who are involved in the program will go to college. I think some of them might stay and work in the grocery store if we can get the grocery store open.